So there are 3 patterns that are silently destroying your destiny. And the scary part is most people have no idea that they're there. So in this video, I'm going to reveal what these 3 patterns are and what you need to do to break out of your wilderness and into the promise that God has for you. So I was working with this guy who had built a 7-figure business from scratch. And from the outside looking in, everything was good. But behind the scenes, it was a completely different story. So this guy was exhausted. His business was surviving barely month to month. And no matter what he tried, nothing seemed to work. So I asked him, what do you think the problem really is? And he said, man, the economy's jacked up. People aren't spending money anymore. Or maybe I have the wrong strategy. I don't know. But I need something to work quickly. And here's what I told him. Like, you don't build a 7-figure business with a broken strategy, right? And if the economy was the issue, then everybody in this economy will be losing right now. But that's not the case. So there are people in the same economy, in your same industry, that are thriving. So clearly it's not those things. So I asked him a question that I ask every private client that I work with. See, after doing this for so long, I realized that 97% of business problems are really internal problems. But most people don't know how to diagnose the internal issues. So they spend time, money, and energy chasing strategies and tactics, and nothing changes because they never address the root cause of the problem. See, there are 4 levels to getting breakthrough results in business. The first is identity. Who are you? The second is ideals, which is values and principles that you live by. The third is instructions, and these are the strategic directions. And the fourth is implementation, and these are the specific actions that you take. Now, most people spend all of their time on implementation and instruction. They're constantly looking for the next strategy, the next tactic, the next hack, but they completely ignore the identity and ideals. And ironically, that's the foundation to all major breakthrough. And after I asked him that question, he paused for a second and he said something that revealed the exact reason he was struggling in his business. He said, man, I have trust issues. Like, people say one thing and do the complete opposite. So I've had to build this business myself and I'm tired, but I don't trust nobody to help me. And in that moment, I knew that that wasn't a marketing problem. It wasn't a strategy problem. It was a control problem stemming from his inability to trust people. And it was killing his business from the inside out. See, what he didn't realize was he was stuck in survival mode, not because of his circumstances, not because of the economy, but it was because of his confession, his mouth. Every word that came out of his mouth was painting a picture of lack and limitation. And here's what I saw. Every one of those statements sounded like a fact, but they were just in agreement with fear, with burnout, with limitation, in agreement with the belief that I can't trust anybody. See, his business wasn't being held back by a lack of resources. It was being held back by the way he talked about what was possible. And I get it. He wasn't trying to be negative. He was tired. He was frustrated. He was worn down. But the problem is, when you repeat something long enough, you don't just start to feel it. You also begin to believe it. And once you believe it, you start to build around it. And this isn't theory. This is biblical. Like, we see this in Numbers chapter 13. So God tells Moses to send 12 spies to scout the land that he already promised. And this wasn't a negotiation. This wasn't a possibility. It was a done deal. But when 10 of those spies came back, what did they say? We can't do it. They're stronger than us. We seem like grasshoppers in our own eyes and in their eyes too. And only 2 of them said, God said we can have this land. Let's go take it up. But the other 10, they spoke fear, doubt, defeat. And they literally talked themselves out of the promise. And God said something wild in Numbers chapter 14, verse 28. He said, I'm going to do unto you the very thing that you said. And I want you to let that sink in. See, they didn't die in the wilderness because of giants. They died because of their confessions. And that's what I see happening so often today. People who are gifted, people who are called, people who have the strategy, but because of how they talk, they're living a version of their life that God never intended. Because your words don't just describe your reality, they actually create it. See, if you keep saying I'm stuck, I can't trust people, I can't afford it, nobody's buying, maybe I missed my opportunity, then don't be surprised when that becomes your experience in life. You're not just venting about problems, you're building something with your mouth, whether you know this or not. And if you want to escape the wilderness, the first shift you must make is to stop agreeing with limitation and start aligning your word with God's word. The second pattern that keeps people trapped in the wilderness is magnifying their problem more than they trust the power that God gave them to overcome it. And that's what happened to the 10 spies. Like, God already said, I'm giving you this land. But what did they say? They said the people there are giants. The land devours its inhabitants. We don't stand a chance. They believed the problem was bigger than they were. And as a result, they missed out on the promise. So So I want to ask you, how many times in your life have you done the same thing? Like God gave you a vision for a business, and then you look at your bank account and say, man, there's no way I could afford that. God gives you the charge to hire somebody, but you're still focused on the people that let you down in the past. God gave you an idea, but you talk yourself out of it before you even start. This is how survival mode works. You start making decisions based off fear instead of your faith. You downsize the dream to match your doubt, and slowly your belief system becomes your ceiling. Not because you weren't capable, but because you kept magnifying the giants that were before you. And the third and final pattern that kept them stuck and keeps most people stuck today is simple, but it's very dangerous. They didn't move when God told them to move. So after the 10 spies gave their negative report and the people start freaking out, God still tried to reason with them. He reminded them of what he already promised them. And Joshua and Caleb tried to plead with everybody. They said, look, the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid. Let's go and take up this land. But the people did not listen. They cried, they complained, they blamed Moses, and then they said something that was heartbreaking. They said, let's go back to Egypt. And I just want you to think about that for a second. Like God freed them from slavery, fed them in the wilderness, brought them to the edge of the promise. And then they said, we would rather go back to bondage than to move forward into the unknown, because obedience always requires you to leave what's familiar. And that's what I see so many leaders, entrepreneurs, and creatives going through today. They know what God said. They know what the next step is, but because it's uncomfortable and uncertain, they delay it. And I need you to hear me. Delayed obedience is still disobedience, and disobedience will always keep you running around the same mount. This happens in business too. Like it's time to raise your prices, but you don't do it. You know it's time to let go of the wrong clients, but you keep holding on to them. You know it's time to build the thing, to launch the thing that God told you, but you talk yourself out of it every single time, because obedience requires a new identity. You have to become the kind of person who moves without full clarity, who acts on faith instead of proof, who trusts the instruction even when the outcome is not guaranteed. And that's what this business owner was missing. God wasn't holding back his breakthrough. He was waiting on his obedience. So here's what I need you to understand. You are not in the wilderness because God forgot about you. You're there because he's preparing you for the promise. Like before Jesus ever stepped into public ministry, he was led into the wilderness to be tested. And he passed every single test with his words. And it's written that that's how Jesus fought back. Before David ever wore a crown, he was running through caves, rejected, overlooked, hiding, but his heart stayed aligned with what God said, even though his circumstances didn't. Before Joseph became second in command, he was betrayed, falsely accused, and forgotten about. But not once did we see him curse the process with his words. And that's the key that most people miss. It's not the wilderness that breaks you. It's how you respond to it with your words. If you complain like the Israelites did, if you speak fear, doubt, and defeat over your life, if your words do not align with what God has already said, then just like them, you'll wander around in circles. Not because God changed his mind, but because you use your mouth to cancel out your own breakthrough. See, your words are either going to keep you in the wilderness or they're going to walk you into the promise. So let me ask you a question. Where are these patterns showing up in your life right now? Are you speaking limitation over your vision without realizing it? Are you magnifying the obstacles in your life instead of trusting what God already showed you? Are you hesitating on instruction that you know is clear, but fear is making you second guess it? Because if we're honest, it's not always the devil. It's not always the algorithm. It's not always the economy. Sometimes it's just us living in survival mode. And survival mode isn't a season, it's a mindset. So here's what I want you to remember about the Israelites. They weren't kept out of the promised land because they lacked resources, ability, or access. They were kept out because of three things. Number one, they spoke against the promise that God gave them. Number two, they believed the problem was bigger than their ability to overcome it. And number three, they refused to obey God's instructions. And those same patterns are keeping so many gifted, called, and anointed entrepreneurs in the same cycles of lack and limitation. So my challenge for you is to do an internal audit of how this is showing up in your life, in your business, in your career. And I want you to apply what I taught you in this video, make the adjustments, and watch how quickly your life can change. If you found this video valuable, drop your biggest lesson below in the comments. I want to hear from you. Share this video, somebody needs to hear it. And make sure you subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this. I love you.